Joining me now is conservative campaign strategist Noel Fritz. Noel, what do you make of this? I mean, we have seen this movement across the country where mostly liberal cities are caving to the demands of the silent minority, and they're just removing these statues that have been there for 100 years.
Well, it's a very vocal minority, Stephanie, and it's really unfortunate that we're seeing this. Durham's my hometown. It's where I grew up. It's very unfortunate. I have heard just in the last hour or two that the sheriff is going to track down those vandals for the destruction of that property and prosecute them. But what we're seeing here is just indicative of the larger movement nationwide, as you referred to. The left has been militarizing, in effect, the public discourse. They've been calling for coups. They've been calling for blood in the streets. It's not acceptable. This is not how we work in a constitutional republic. Ultimately, what this all stems from is a new term, if I can introduce your audience to it, oppressive political correctness. That's what we're seeing here. This oppressive political correctness requires violence. Violence is not an aberration with these people. They're unfortunately very vocal, they're unfortunately very violent, and we're very likely to see it again.
And what they don't realize is they can knock down these statues, but they're not going to get rid of our U.S. history. Of course, there's painful history when it comes to slavery in this country, but there's a process, especially when it comes to these cities with the statues. They can't just go around knocking down property that doesn't belong to them. And again, if the cities decide that they want to remove them, that's up to the city. I mean, they're knocking these statues down like the Islamic State knocks down statues.
Exactly right. It's a perfect parallel. ISIS knocks down statues, not patriotic Americans. What you're looking at here is a place where, for these folks, they want an America where dissent ultimately will not be tolerated. And that's a totalitarian state. It's a total state where literally what you think or believe or feel may be subject to their approval. Ultimately, you might have heard the phrase, war is politics by other means. Well, what we're looking at here is politics by other means, and they are very violent.
Well, and then this brings us to, how this all started, how the violence started in Charlottesville, is that there were protesters that were upset with the fact that they were going to remove the Robert E. Lee statue. Now, again, they had the right to peacefully protest. They had a permit to be there, and then the left shows up. They show up ready to fight with tear gas, with bats, with shields. So when Trump condemned both sides, he was right, because both sides added to this volatile mix that was there. And so for him to just condemn one side, I think would have been inappropriate, especially with the information he had when he initially reacted.
Well, yeah, and what you're looking at here is a situation where Terry McAuliffe literally told the folks to stand down. Terry McAuliffe took a play out of the Hillary Clinton Benghazi playbook and let him play. And what we saw, unfortunately, were the deaths of 3 people. It's unconscionable. I think you're likely to see investigations as a result of this behavior with the use of the administrative state to foment this unrest. Ultimately, that's what you're seeing. It should be added that all of this violence is a natural extension of the administrative state, right? Let's go back a couple of years to Barack Obama and the IRS scandal in Cincinnati, trying to put down conservative speech with the nonprofits and the 501c4, the granting of that nonprofit status. Let's look back at McCain-Feingold. McCain-Feingold is simply censorship. That's all it is, and it's an incumbent protection racket. So the administrative state, the bureaucratic state, they want to see the suppression of free speech, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so McAuliffe, he denies that there was any sort of stand-down order, and the police department is denying this as well. So I'm not sure that we know that for sure, but anyone who was there would assume that there was some sort of stand-down order because officers were just standing back watching all of this play out. Now, Donald Trump did condemn white supremacists. He called out neo-Nazis. He called out the KKK. Yet the mainstream media reporters, the sycophants, they don't want to let this go. And they're more angry with him than they are the actual killer, the actual Nazi in this case. And there was a fiery exchange between reporters and Donald Trump today. Our president, roll tape.
Excuse me. I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. No, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down? Excuse me. Are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him?
I do.
Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
So he was trying to make a point here is that there are a lot of people that were in this area at the time. So we had good people that went there to protest peacefully about the removal of Robert E. Lee. We had some good people on the left that came to just come and counter-protest. That's fine. And then we had bad people on both sides. And so for them to just to continue going after the president, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to label him as a racist that is sympathetic to the alt-right, to white supremacists, and they're working this angle very hard. And I would say this is because they have nothing on the Russia-Trump narrative collusion. It's all falling apart. So this is the new Russia.
Yep, absolutely. Well, can we now pronounce the Russia hoax dead now that the drive-by media has totally left it and now is alighting upon this issue here? I had not heard that Donald Trump audio. That is outstanding. I'm very proud to see my president stand up for this country's founders so vociferously there. Well, let's add Abraham Lincoln to the list. He's got some really questionable ideas on race himself. In fact, I think associated himself with W.E.B. Du Bois' Back to Africa movement even. I don't see the fascist Antifa asking for the destruction of the Lincoln Memorial. Right now I'm hearing they're calling for the replacement of a TR monument in New York City. This proves that the media has not one leg to stand on Russia, and they found their boogeyman. They have a new boogeyman. They might be here for a week or two before they go back to Russia. I predict CNN will certainly go back to Russia, like they covered the crash of that one flight for about a year to foment ratings and the clutching of pearls. The media has lost all credibility, and it's so great to see guys like you here at OAN standing up for truth here. These folks have been perpetrating what I would call abuse in the media on the American public, gaslighting all of America, calling them all bigots if you want to enforce the rule of law. You're a bigot if you think that the border should be protected. If you think that you should have affordable access to health care and you choose what kind of health care you get, well, you want Granny to die.
Yeah.
And this is what the media beats this drum on every day, all day long. And America's had it, and it culminated in Donald Trump in 2016. And I can't believe it, but they still haven't managed to figure this thing out yet. Folks aren't going to take it anymore.
We got to run, but thank you. Great points.